We'll have a big celebration next year. Invite you all. Have Fran's pie or cake or something. So, of course, I got to ask Fran that first. But good to see everybody. I'm joined today by Kara. I'm joined today by Kara Wente, who heads up the Ohio Department of Children and Youth. There have been questions raised about publicly funded child care, daycare here in the state of Ohio. I think it's important that we start with the essential facts to kind of lay the groundwork here. Number one, in the state of Ohio, we have 100,000 children whose child care is being subsidized by the state of Ohio. On any one given day, approximately 100,000 children. Number two, because children move in and out of public supported child care, in any given year, there's approximately 116,000 children who for all or part of the year were in publicly funded child care. Number three, there are almost 5,200 child care centers in Ohio that serve for some or all of the children they serve are supported through public funds. Again, so the universe is approximately 5,200 of those daycare centers. About the situation, the Trump administration outlined to ensure protection against fraud. The state of Ohio is already following all three of those, doing other things. We'll talk about that for a moment. Things Ohio has been doing. Number one, Ohio pays facilities based on attendance, not on enrollment. Attendance, not on enrollment. Paying only for the days that a child is, in fact, in child care. Paying based on attendance only uses taxpayers' dollars when a child is actually physically at the child care facility, not just signed up. The Biden administration required all states to pay by enrollment by August 2026. Never switched. We never did that. We never switched to paying by enrollment. We have always paid by attendance. The Trump administration just today announced that states can continue to pay based upon attendance. Number two, since the creation of our Department of Children and Youth, we have verified attendance by requiring a personal identification number, a PIN, along with a photo confirmation or a location-specific QR code. Director Wente will, in a moment, show you how that is done and explain that. Number three, our department uses monthly cross-department data analytics to identify potential fraud, waste, and misuse of state funds. We complete risk-based, data-driven, and referral-initiated monitoring reviews on monthly basic concerns. Number four, the department also conducts unannounced health and safety inspections and reviews family eligibility and financial management practices. In calendar year 2025, because of the Department of Children and Youth's annual unannounced visits, we closed 38 child care centers in Ohio, and our attempts to close 2 more are still going through administrative hearings. In total, last year, the Department of Children and Youth conducted over 10,000 unannounced visits at child care centers over the state of Ohio. Now, if you look at the monitor, further, the department encourages the public to send in tips on potential fraud. Since the creation of the Department of Children and Youth, we have had a toll-free hotline in place and a dedicated fraud reporting email address. We put into place an additional report fraud tool on the front page of the department's website to increase public transparency and help the public send in emails about potential fraud. Now, as you know, in the afternoon of December 31st, this past year, just a few days ago, at about 3 o'clock, I issued a statement about child care in the state of Ohio. Prior to that statement, the Department of Children and Youth, the Department of Children and Youth had received 124 tips from the public in 2025. 124 tips we had received from the public in 2025. Now, of those tips, 61 have resulted in daycare centers being required to pay back overpayments to the state. They have also resulted in the Department of Children and Youth closing 12 separate facilities. Further, they found that of that number, of that 124 tips, 30 of the daycare centers identified through the tips were actually operating in accordance with state and federal laws. 26, to get the number, 26 are still in the final stages of review. Now, after my statement on the last day of December, that's what the law is. And it's a good law. In fact, adults working or even volunteering at a child care center must undergo FBI and BCI background checks, state and national sex offender checks, child abuse and neglect check. Number 6, as fraud evolves, the department's protection practices have evolved. For example, in June 2025, the department began an anti-PIN sharing enforcement process. As a result, more than 65,000 families were reminded that PINs must never be shared with the provider. As a result, over 7,500 families actually reset their PIN number. In November 2025, the Department of Children and Youth implemented payment category reforms. The department updated part-time hours, classifying them from 7 hours per week to 10 hours per week, and full-time hours from 25 hours per week to 33 hours per week to ensure the full needs of the family were met by one provider whenever possible. This helps to ensure that providers do not move children simply to get a full-time payment for one child and then a part-time payment for another child for the same classroom slot. Further, this past December, the Department of Children and Youth closed a dual provider loophole. The department clarified that children may attend two daycare providers only when care needs cannot be met by one. As a result, the department has reviewed 1,200 cases and ended more than 90 authorizations. Number 7, after June 2025, when the Department of Children and Youth reminded all families and providers that they cannot share PIN numbers, we established new policies to further safeguard the children in care in Ohio tax dollars that include a process for random monthly reviews and targeted reviews for high-risk practices. These reviews have now started. Now I'd like to turn things over to the director, and she will talk a little bit about, give some of the nuance in regard to the protections that we have in place. Director?
Thank you, Governor. So one of the topics that have been in the forefront is how do we safeguard to ensure children are actually in attendance? And as the governor highlighted, we have always paid on attendance, which means we pay for the hours a child's in care. If you were to take your child to one of our centers, you would likely see this tablet by the door. The tablet requires a parent, when they drop off and pick up, to enter their 10-digit telephone number. It's associated with them as an individual. Once they enter that 10-digit phone number, they'll see their name come up. They click on their name, and then they're able to say, I want to check my child in or out. Once they've done that, they then enter their 4-digit PIN. That personal identification number is required to be set the first time they log in, and they're required to safeguard it. As the governor said earlier, we wanted to ensure that all parents were reminded that that PIN has to be safeguarded and not shared, and that the provider should not have it. That's what we issued back in June. Once they issue that PIN, there's a picture taken to authenticate that the person signing them in is an adult that's known to the case. And then they submit it and they save it. To give a little bit more detail around this process, we do have a short video that will actually show you how it works on the tablet.
Welcome to the introduction video for the KinderSign app. This video will show you how to check a child in and out of care on a tablet at your program's location. To begin, open the KinderSign app by tapping on the app icon. Enter in your phone number and press Next. It will lead you to a screen asking for your PIN number. Enter your PIN and press Verify. You will be signed into the main menu. Click on Attendance. You will be led to a screen where you have to take your photo. Smile and press Authenticate to take the photo. You will see a list of children associated with you. Choose the Sign In option for the children you are signing in and press the Submit button. You should see the attendance saved message pop up if you are successful. Signing them out is the same process. Enter your phone number and press Next. Enter your PIN number and press Verify. Click on Attendance, smile for the photo and take it by pressing the Authenticate button. Then, select the Sign Out option for the children you wish to sign out and press the Submit button. You should see the attendance saved message appear if you are successful.
That's it. The other option is that the governor mentioned is a QR code. That QR code is actually loaded on this tablet as well. It's location and geocoded specific. And a parent could take a picture with their smartphone that's also registered to them. So that number has to be linked to a person, that has to be linked to a child, that we can safeguard to make sure we know who's checking that child in and out.
So it's for security, but it's also, as the director said, we had situations where that number, that unique number was being actually retained by the facility. And that's not the idea. They should not be able to control that. Whether someone shows up with their child, we're paying on attendance, not on who signed up. And so the attendance is what we want to count, and this is one way that we have a much better opportunity to get that attendance and to know that that person was really, that child was really there. Happy to take any questions, or in all likelihood, I will direct them to the director.
Well, Governor, you just said that these pins were retained. Has there been any suggestion, or have you identified any fraud prior to these letters going out, that the provider was in fact using these pins when the child was there?
I'll let the director take that.
So the reason we did the reminder is that we had a concern that the pins were being shared, but we didn't know why. So we don't have specific cases of fraud linked to the PIN. What we had is that could have been the intent to start the process. So we tried to immediately stop it rather than going a case-by-case situation. We did a blanket review and saw the 7,500 PINs get recoded, if you will. Additionally, we have reports that will allow us to see if a provider required their families to do all the same PIN. Those are things that we're looking at proactively and have been since earlier in County Year 25.
Representative Williams told me last week that on the picture, a lot of these pictures are not clear. And that's something that he would like your agency to look into as well. Have you heard those concerns?
We have heard concerns around, can you actually see the individuals in the picture? Certainly, we can actually go in through reports and see what the picture is being taken of. It's also another report that we have that we would use to indicate if there's a concern or suspicion of fraud. So we actively monitor that, but understand that we can always become more robust, but certainly that's something that's already underway at the department for that very reason. We want to make sure that we're seeing a person, and if we weren't, then that would be a reason for us to open a program integrity review.
Governor, you mentioned social media. There's a sense I'm getting from you that people are out there believing that there's widespread fraud occurring in these daycares. Where do you think that's coming from? What is compelling people to knock on the doors and see if there are effective?
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. I mean, look, in every agency, we try to be as vigilant, and we are as vigilant as we can about fraud. Does fraud occur? Yes, fraud occurs. Our job is to do everything we can. No fraud is acceptable. Our zero tolerance, and our job is to do everything that we can. But you have 5,200 facilities. You have 100,000 kids going in those facilities every single day. And so, there have been times in the past, as you could see by what my statement, and the director can elaborate, there's been times we found fraud. And, we go after that and try to find that. So, look, what we have seen is what goes on in Minnesota. I don't, whatever is being reported is being reported. I'm not talking about Minnesota at all. But there has been some connection I've seen on social media from people who say, well, there's a lot of Somalians in Ohio too. There's Somalians in Minnesota. Therefore, Ohio probably has a huge problem. I don't think that's fair. Have we found fraud? Yes, and Kara can explain and talk about that.
Do you think people are confused, or do you think people are actively distorting?
Well, I can't go there. Look, my job as governor and the director's job is to do everything that we can to find fraud and to stop it. And we will continue to do that. This is what we have been doing. This is what we're going to continue to do.
Governor, you mentioned the vast majority majority of these claims in the last month have been directed toward Somali Americans, Somali immigrants specifically. Who is committing?
Well, I'm not sure I said the vast majority.
I'm saying
yeah.
the vast majority of these claims have been directed toward Somali Americans and Somali immigrants in Minnesota and here in Ohio. Of course, Columbus has the second largest population
Yes.
of Somali Americans. Is it your opinion that one population is committing some level
No.
of fraud, or is
No,
that
look,
fraud
but
widespread?
there's two ways of saying it, and they're both true. What we have found in fraud in Ohio has certainly included people who are not Somalians. Has it also included some people who have a Somalia background? Yes. So both things are true. So, you know, we don't care who's committing the fraud. We go after that and do whatever we can to stop it. So I think that, you know, we need to, in this discussion, I think, focus on fraud itself and what we're doing. And look, we always evolve as we see what we think is causing fraud, or we see some vulnerabilities. You know, the easiest example is the PIN example. There was no reason that many of the facilities had the PINs. Now, as Kara said, we can't say that they were committing fraud, but they had no business with those PINs anyway. And so going to do what you can to eliminate that. So it's always a constant process to continue to evolve, and we will continue to evolve as people continue to do things. But we need to look at this as not a Somalia problem. We need to look at this as a fraud problem.
On the flip side, then, there have been daycares, you know, that are run by Somali immigrants that have been targeted. I mean, law enforcement in Columbus has been called multiple times to these daycares. Do you have broader safety concerns that these, you know,
Well,
concerned citizens
look.
are banging on
One of the
daycares?
reasons we're doing this press conference is to try to get out to the general public what the facts are. And, you know, the facts are that there's a reason that citizens who are going up and trying to video something and trying to see what's going on inside the doors aren't being allowed in. You know, that we do 10,000 inspections a year, and we do more when we get more complaints, But the public needs to understand, if it's your child in there, you don't want a random person to be able to knock on that door and get in. They have to have a reason to get in. They have to be a parent to get in. They have to be a guardian. They have to be someone who's responsible for that child. Or they have to be a volunteer who's already been cleared with whole kinds of background things. So we're careful with our kids in Ohio. And I think people should expect us to be, and should demand that we do that. So there shouldn't be a shock when you see something on social media and someone is going, I can't get into this place. No one will let me in. Well, hell no. No one should let them in. You should let them in. It's also, I think, you know, also this press conference to say, look, fraud does occur. And if we think fraud doesn't occur, we're wrong. It does occur. And our job is to do everything that we can and constantly look for new ways to stop fraud. And we welcome, let me say it very clearly, and you can see we've always welcomed tips. And doesn't mean every tip plays out, but if somebody feels, hey, there's something wrong going on in that place, there's some fraud going on, we want their tips. We've always wanted their tips. We appreciate the fact that after we put our release out at 3 o'clock on December 31st, we got a bunch of tips coming in. Now, we haven't run them all out. We can't tell you yet whether they play out, but we welcome those. So we want the public's involvement. But going to a daycare center, whether it's run by Somalians or whoever it's run, you're not going to expect to get in unless you've got a reason to get in.
Governor, do you see this as clearly?
We'll go to you next. Okay.
Clearly, you know, nobody wants fraud to be occurring, but do you see the rhetoric going on right now? Do you see these claims as being from anti-Somali sentiment?
Well, look, I think that's something, again, the national audience does not understand, and there's no reason they would, is that the vast majority of Somalians have been here for a long time. I mean, this influx that came for most of Somalians for a number of years ago. Many of them are citizens. Many of them run businesses. So, you know, we need to just not fixate on any population. We need to fixate on the problem. We need to fixate on the fraud. We need to focus on what we can do collectively, all of us together, to stop fraud in Ohio or stop fraud in any other state. That's what we need to do.
Governor, President Trump has frozen child care funds because of the investigation in Minnesota. You said that we're meeting all of their requirements. Have you received any guidance about release of those funds or whether the administration believes you meet those terms?
So I'm going to ask the director to, she's had an exchange with the Trump administration. I want her to read the response, and we're not there yet, but I'm going to have her explain exactly what she did and where we are.
So in the evening of December 31st, we outlined much of what the governor already outlined as the work we were doing to safeguard taxpayer dollars. We shared that with our partners at the Administration for Children and Families, told them that we were doing our due diligence and constantly evolving and looking for new ways to expand and improve. In that evening, we got an email back that they said, "Thank you for providing this information. We appreciate your diligence in safeguarding taxpayer dollars." So yes, we have been in communication. We've shared our information from a high-ranking official at the Administration for Children and Families.
Follow-up, do we have enough money to keep paying for this right now? Or is there any concern about not getting additional funds?
Certainly, we know that we need the federal funds to maintain our program as is. We are going to work closely with our federal partners to ensure they have the information from us that they need to feel confident. We know that we are moving on every measure that they have already outlined and shared that information. But yes, we will need federal funds to maintain our program as is ongoing.
But this is not a situation where today there's no money.
That's correct.
This is a situation where, you know, we feel confident, confident that we are providing them the information, and we'll provide them any other information to validate what we are doing. So we do not anticipate, certainly don't at this point, anticipate a problem with that.
How many days do we have here before the funding runs out?
Yeah, assuming no additional funds would come in.
If we do not receive funds over the next 8 to 10 weeks, that would be problematic for our system as it is today. We have funding.
So 8 weeks from now.
Yep.
8
That's
to 10
correct.
weeks from now.
Have you gotten any communication from the Trump administration as to when they plan on clearing states for?
No, I think the answer is no, unless you
That's
have
correct.
something different, yeah.
We have not received that yet.
Governor, the last time I remember you like really calling a very public fact check in this way was in October when there were baseless claims that Haitians were eating dogs in Springfield. Do you see any connection between these?
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do that.
Why not? We'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I know you would, but I'm not going to do it. Look, my job, it seems to me, is to share with the people of the state of Ohio the facts. And we tried today in the statement that I just gave to share with the people of the state of Ohio what the facts are, what we know. Now, there's a lot more out there. I mean, you know, we could go back and talk about different investigations. We could talk about when we have found fraud. I mean, there's a whole history of what we've done, and so this is not all the information there is, but we think it's the essential information, at least, to try to make it understandable.
What happens when the tech is down? I show up to drop off my kid, the tablet's broken. What,
Yeah, so in the event that the technology wasn't able to be connected to Wi-Fi, it can store the information. It doesn't have to be connected real time. You can connect it later. We also still require that they have a separate attendance log. So not only are they doing this on the tablet, they're also keeping a classroom log that the teacher's signing as well. So there's two safeguards, but unless the tablet is broken and you need a new one, that should not be the issue.
Can you address?
On the attendance, please, on the attendance, payment is still going on. Is that what you're saying, that payment is still going on based on attendance for Saturday?
That's correct. Ohio pays on attendance. We have paid on attendance. We are continuing to pay on attendance. We did not make the switch, as the governor outlined, to enrollment. And so, yes, payments are still going out based on attendance.
Are the 10,000 unscheduled visits, is that enough, or do you need to do more of those, or what do you?
Look, I think we're always reviewing that. I mean, in any department, any agency, we're going to constantly review what is necessary. I guess if that was the only thing we were doing, it's one thing, but we're doing a number of different things. But certainly, unannounced visits, no matter whether you're talking about nursing homes or whether you're talking about childcare, always important. And so we will continue to review what we think is necessary to make sure that kids are in a good environment, but also at the same time check for any fraud that we might pick up during that visit. Again, I'll say this again. We ask the public to give us tips. If they have tips, we will act on those tips. And in the past, some tips, as I gave you the statistics for last year, some tips we find play out and there's a problem and we take action. Other cases, they don't play out and there's not a problem.
What kind of fraud is the most common? What do you do about it? We've shut down, what, 30?
Well, I would say, let me, we're paying by the person. So the most common fraud, I would think, Kara can correct me, the director can correct me, would be somehow manipulating the numbers. But
That's correct. So it would be if you don't have proper documentation, you've requested payment for children that we don't have attendance records for, and you have that where we've provided technical assistance and you're continuing to do that, that's going to be the most common where we see that there's an intent. A lot around when we have a conversation around fraud, it gets very convoluted very quickly because there's a misuse and then there's fraud. And so we often see it in our space of attendance and attendance tracking, and that's where we focus a lot of our attention to try to safeguard.
Can you discuss the 61 over facilities with the overpayments last year? How did those overpayments happen and how much an overpayment was there?
So in those 61 overpayments, it was just over $2 million that was required to be collected back. Total. Oftentimes, when we see an overpayment like that, if we don't close the program, it's because it wasn't, and we don't feel it was intentional. It was, they didn't have proper paperwork, they didn't have proper documentation with technical assistance. They took the necessary actions to ensure that they were following the rules once they were told. So those overpayments still get collected because any dollar that went out incorrectly, we would continue to go after, even if we felt like their process now going forward was okay. So that's where that $2 million came from.
The letter sent by House Republicans called for unannounced inspections of Columbus area child care facilities, audit attendance records, and billing, and immediately.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're going to have to speak up. I apologize.
The letter sent by House Republicans to DCY called for additional unannounced visits at Columbus area facilities, audits, and immediately suspending or withholding state payments if allegations are corroborated, pending a full investigation, among some other things. Rep. Williams on social media threatened subpoenas if that wasn't done. So are those things that you're going to be increasing, and how do you respond to that?
Well, I think we've given a pretty thorough statement in answer to that in regard to what we've done. You want to add anything?
Sure, I'll just add. So as the governor said, we've been focusing on program integrity since inception of the new department. And one of the pieces that we have continued to evolve with is what is the right balance of being proactive in data and case review, and then also reacting to the tips and referrals that we receive from the public. One of the pieces we decided back in June when we started to look at the PIN conversation and the reminder was that we need to do more proactive case pools. So in 2026, we've already started our plan, which was to do a randomized sample of 400 cases, which is high confidence, statistically valid for our number of providers, but it's statewide. So we already had planned to do more unannounced visits, more program integrity reviews prior to that letter, and we'll continue to do the work that we had planned to do. Those providers have been selected. They know that we're going to be on site to collect documentation. We have that work was planned and has already started to be executed. So I have spoke to Representative Williams, and right after he sent the letter, explained that much of what we were doing was already underway. He understood that. It was a great conversation. Additionally, our teams have been reaching out to representatives and members of the General Assembly to make sure they know. Talking about program integrity isn't something we do often because we don't want someone to understand and know what we're out there looking for. So we do protect what our plans are to safeguard and to prevent bad actors. So we are having those individual conversations with the members over the last few days and will continue.
Given how Ohio has used TANF money to pay for childcare, does this funding interruption pose any problems elsewhere in the budget if you have to rely on that money more?
It should not. It should not. Again, we have about 8 weeks. We have every confidence this will get resolved and the federal government will be satisfied with what we're doing. So, yeah.
Representative Williams also suggested that a stoppage in public funds, including state funds, with a quote-unquote suspicion of fraud, just probable cause. Does that violate due process at all?
I'm sorry,
They
sir,
have
say
to
that again.
prove that public funding would stop with the suspicion of fraud. Does that violate due process at all? He said they have to prove they're not committing fraud.
Well, look, I'm not going to get into that. I think the only thing I would say is that we are doing it, we think, the proper way. We think we're doing it in a way that protects the taxpayers of Ohio, at the same time allows a process to take place. And part of the process is built into the law. And sometimes we would like to hurry the process up. As I think I said, we have several cases that are actually now under review. And we have one case that is in the Court of Appeals at this point. So these centers, some of them are pretty aggressive about following their constitutional rights. And we let courts deal with that. But, we're not bypassing any constitutional rights of anybody. So.
Governor, the daycare centers have obviously dominated the conversation lately, but there have also been claims on social media about Medicaid fraud in Ohio. Can you talk a little bit about what safeguards exist within that department to combat fraud?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. I'm not going to do that today. We're happy to put you in contact with the director who can go through that, or have a meeting with the director. Happy to do that, but I'm not going to stand up here without the director, because the director is charged by me with making sure we're doing everything that we can. There is one other thing that has been out in the social media. I think maybe we should talk about the Somalia Education Resource Center. There's been things posted about this. A couple facts. Somalia Education Resource Center has not received public funds for more than 6 months. Previously received federal funds through a USDA program administered in Ohio by our Department of Education and Workforce. The program reimburses child care centers for the cost of providing food to children. So there's a food issue, and it comes under the Department of Education. On December 10th, 2024, the Department of Education and Workforce received an anonymous tip that Somalia Education Resource Center was claiming to have served more meals to kids in their 48 affiliated child care centers than they really did. In response, we began a series of unannounced site inspections to these child care centers. Those began on December 16th, 2024, and they continued into 2025. These inspections revealed the number of meals actually served was consistently lower than what the number of meals they were claiming to serve. As a result, in June 2025, we suspended payment to the organization. That's June 2025. We suspended payment to the organization. In September 2025, we terminated them from the food program altogether. In the time since, they've been fighting us in court, as I mentioned, on the suspension and the termination. But we are confident that the courts will uphold our decision, but we do await the court decision. Again, the Somalia Education Resource Center has not received public funds since before they were suspended in June of last year. Finally, one of the claims that was up on social media, and has been repeated by some people, Finally, as to the claims that many of their 48 affiliated child care centers open the same day, that is not true. That is not true. It's not accurate. Now, we imagine this allegation came from an online directory that includes child care centers receiving funding for the food reimbursement program. The date in question is actually the date this directory received a system update to allow providers to access a new program application. That is why we think those all bear the same date. That's why they all appear to share the same start date on the web page. In reality, the first of this organization's child care centers were approved to provide meals under the federal program in 2015 and 2016 school year, with more being added over time. Their last two child care centers were approved under the nutrition program in the 2024-2025 school year before the start of our investigation. So, those are the facts. That was another thing that was out there with a different program, but I thought I would just try to clarify that in case that comes up in the future. Okay.
One more question. Governor, do you have any thoughts on the arrest of Maduro?
Look, he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. The world is better off for him standing trial. You know, I think that the challenge, of course, for our country is, you know, what happens there next, and that's always the challenge. We've learned that from history. You know, what happens after that? But I don't have any sympathy for him. You know, I'm sure the Justice Department has the evidence to make their case, and you know, Venezuela is better off without him. I think you see the reaction of Venezuelans in the United States. I think you see the reaction of Venezuelans that many of them in Venezuela that were interviewed the other day, where I saw them yesterday. So again, that's about all I've got to say. I'm no longer doing foreign affairs, so but we'll let it go at that.
One more question. The latest budget correction bill still has you switch to enrollment by 2028, I believe. Is that still the state's plan?
It's not our, the latest, say that again.
The budget correction bill only delayed the transition from attendance to enrollment by 2 years into 2028. Is it still the state's intent to transition to enrollment-based payments for child?
No, we're always going to stay on attendance. It's always been our intention to do attendance. What was going on is you had the Biden administration giving us a deadline. We did not, because we hadn't hit the deadline, we withheld that. We held back. We said, no, we don't want to do that. And you know, we never got to the deadline until the Trump administration came in. They changed it, you know, just today. And, you know, that's something we certainly wanted them to do. So those facts have changed. But what we wanted and what we intended, you know, that has not changed. We know one is better than the other. We know one is more accurate. We know one will save taxpayers' dollars. Thanks, everybody.